Snow had begun drifting across the lonely prairie long before the sun sank behind the hills. And by nightfall, the wind had turned vicious, sharp as a blade, in a crooked little cabin at the edge of an abandoned trail. A poor girl named Ilara bent over her small iron stove, coaxing a fading fire to life. She was thin, her hands cracked from cold, her dress patched a dozen times. Yet in her eyes lived a softness no hardship could dim. She had weathered more winters alone than any girl her age should have, ever since her parents died 2 years earlier, leaving her with nothing but this falling apart cabin, 2 acres of land, and more debt than she could understand. Each night she prayed she'd make it through just one more day, and tonight felt colder than the ones before, cold enough to make fear crawl through her bones. She had just set her last piece of bread on the table, about to break it in half to save some for morning, when a thundering knock slammed against her door. Ilara froze. Out here, at this hour, no one ever came, and she had nothing to give, not food, not warmth, not safety. But the knock came again, louder, almost desperate. Heart pounding, she pushed herself to her feet and opened the door just a crack. The wind roared inside, but over it, she saw a tall man with snow crusted on his coat, his beard stiff with frost, and beside him, clutching his hand, stood a little girl no older than 7, shivering so violently her teeth chattered. "Please," the man said, his voice raw. "We're stranded. Our horse slipped on ice and bolted. We've been walking for hours. She's freezing. Do you have a place we can stage for the night?" Ilara didn't hesitate. No matter how poor she was, no matter how empty her shells, she could never turn away a child. She threw the door open and ushered them inside. The man lifted the girl into his arms, as if he feared she might collapse, and carried her to the warmth of the stove. Ilara wrapped a blanket around the small child, rubbing her hands to restore circulation. The man's eyes softened with gratitude. "Hey." And in that moment, Ilara noticed how tired he looked. Tired, not just from the cold, but from life itself. "I'm Ilara," she said quietly. "You can stay here tonight. I don't have much, but I'll do what I can." "I'm Colt," he replied. "And this is my daughter, Lily. You've saved us." "Akana," she shook her head. Anyone would have done it. But Colt gave her a look, the kind that said he'd met more people who would turn away a stranger than open their door. He stood near the fire for a long time, warming his hands, while Ilara divided her last piece of bread into 3 tiny portions and set them on the table. Colt noticed. "We can't take your food," he said. "You need it. You need it more," she answered, pushing the plate toward Lily first. The child smiled weakly and took a bite. Colt hesitated, then ate only half, leaving the rest for Ilara when she wasn't looking. A quiet filled the cabin, soft, fragile, made of exhaustion and unspoken worries. But the longer they sat, the more warmth returned to Lily's cheeks. When she finally dozed off in the chair, Colt draped his coat over her. Ilara watched him tuck her in with such tenderness that her chest tightened. This was a man who carried more weight than he ever let others see. She offered him her parents' old room, apologizing for the creaky cot and thin blankets. He thanked her as though she had given him the finest suite in the grandest hotel. Later that night, after Lily fell asleep and Colt had settled down, Kayla returned to the stove, coaxing the last sparks of wood into a steady glow. She didn't realize Colt had stepped into the doorway until he spoke softly. "I don't know how to repay you," he said. "You've shown more kindness in one night than most folks do in a lifetime." Ilara shrugged, warming her numb fingers over the fire. "Kindness is free," she whispered. "It's the only thing I have left." Colt watched her with eyes that held an ache, but also something gentle, thoughtful. He wanted to ask how a girl so young came to live alone in a place like this, but he knew better than to pry. "Still," he said, "you deserve more than this cold cabin and empty shelf." She smiled faintly. "Someday, maybe. But for now, surviving is enough." Morning arrived, pale and quiet. The storm had passed, leaving the world coated in ice that glittered like broken glass. Ilara prepared a small breakfast of boiled water and a pinch of oats, her last. Colt insisted she take payment, offering money from his coat pocket, but she refused. "I didn't help you for reward. I helped because you needed it." He looked at her differently then, as if she were someone rare in a world too often hardened by greed. After bundling Lily in her blanket, he stepped outside with Ilara to look for tracks of his horse. Instead, they saw a wagon approaching, one sturdy, elegant, and nothing like anything a poor traveler would own. On the side was painted a ranch brand Ilara recognized from stories whispered in town, the brand of the richest cattle empire in the territory. The driver hopped down. "Mr. McAllister. Thank the Lord we found you in the young Miss McAllister." Ilara felt her breath catch. That name belonged to only one man around here, the infamous Colt McAllister, the millionaire cowboy who owned half the grazing land in 3 counties. She looked slowly at him, shock trembling through her. He scratched his neck awkwardly. "I was hoping to leave before you discovered that part," he admitted. "People treat us differently when they know." Lara stepped back, overwhelmed. She had thought he was just a weary rancher with calloused hands and a sweet daughter, not a man who could buy and sell every house within 50 miles. She suddenly felt foolish, her small cabin, her tiny meals, her patched dress. But Colt stepped forward gently. "You're thinking your kindness doesn't matter because I have money. But last night, money couldn't buy warmth or food or a safe place for my daughter. Only you could." She swallowed hard, unable to find words. Before leaving, Colt asked her to ride with them to town, insisting they repay her somehow. But Ilara declined. "This is my home," she said. "It may not look like much, but it's all I have left of my family." Colt didn't push. Instead, he handed her a small folded paper. "If you ever need anything to Nathan had all send word to my ranch. You opened your door to us when you had nothing. I won't forget that." Lily hugged Ilara tightly. "Thank you for saving us." And with that, they left. Days passed, then weeks, then months. Life didn't get easier for Elaruna stretched along, and food remained scarce. But she never sent that paper. She survived as best she could. She told herself the rich never remembered the poor, that she'd only embarrass herself by reaching out. She tried to forget the cowboy with the warm eyes and the gentle voice, but she couldn't. One spring morning, after a particularly brutal winter that nearly broke her, the sound of hooves echoed up her path. She rushed outside, expecting debt collectors or strangers. But instead, she found Colt and Lily riding in on a polished carriage. Lily leaped out, running straight into Ilara's arms. Colt stepped down slowly, holding a folded legal envelope. "I gave you time," he said softly. "Time to decide if you'd reach out. You didn't, so I'm here instead." Ilara blinked in confusion. Colt handed her the envelope. She hesitated, then opened its hand. The world tilted. Inside was a deed to her land, her cabin, her home, debt-free, fully restored, and attached to it, a banknote worth more money than she had ever seen. "Colt, I can't accept this," she whispered, shaking. "It's too much. Why would you do this for me?" Colt stepped closer, voice warm and steady. "Because kindness deserves to be answered. Because you saved my daughter. Because you fed us with the last food you had. Because you gave us shelter when no one else would. And because I haven't gone one day without thinking about you." Her breath caught. Lily tugged Ilara's hand. "Daddy says you're the bravest lady we know." Tears burned Ilara's eyes. Colt's voice deepened. "Ilara, you gave us one night of safety. Let me give you a lifetime of it. Not out of pity, never. That because you matter. More than you know." The prairie breeze lifted Ila's hair as she looked at the man before her, not the millionaire cowboy, not the landowner, but the weary father she had helped. the man who understood loneliness and survival as deeply as she did. She stepped forward, her voice trembling. Then stay, not for one night. Stay for good. Colt's smile broke like dawn. He took her hand, and Lily wrapped her arms around both of them, forming a small, fragile circle of hope. And in that lonely corner of the prairie, where a poor girl once sat alone by a dying fire, warmth finally returned, not from the stove, not from wealth, but from a man and his daughter who had found their way back to her. A girl who had given everything when she had nothing discovered. She was worth more than gold to the only people who truly saw her. And the millionaire cowboy who had spent a lifetime searching for something he didn't know he needed, found it in the generosity of a poor girl's open door. Their story, born from a single night of kindness, became the beginning of a new life. One where none of them ever faced a storm alone again.